Welcome back, focused learners. Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we're taking a really fascinating journey through data structure architecture. We're going to start with a concept so simple you experience it every single day, a basic waiting line. But we aren't stopping there. We're going to slowly escalate the difficulty, building up step by step until we're navigating some highly advanced data sequence architectures. If you've ever wondered how software efficiently manages and organizes memory behind the scenes, you are absolutely in the right place for this explainer. Here's a quick look at our roadmap. 1. The queue data structure. 2. Arrays versus linked lists. 3. Double-ended queues. 4. The adapter pattern. And 5. Vectors, lists, and sequences.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the queue data structure.
To really understand how computers process data, we kind of need to look at the physical world first. I want you to picture a literal everyday queue. What exactly happens when you join a line at a coffee shop or, the DMV? Well, you always join at the back, right? And the person who gets served and leaves the line is always the person at the very front. Honestly, you're already an expert in how this data structure works.
In computer science, this is formally called the FIFO principle, first in, first out. It literally means the element inserted earliest is the very first one to be removed and processed. Now contrast this with a stack, which we often talk about in data structures. A stack is last in, first out, kind of like a stack of plates in a cafeteria, where you just grab the top one. But a queue respects the order of arrival.
So the fundamental algorithm of queue movement basically involves two main operations. Step 1 is enqueue, where we insert an element at the rear. Step 2 is dequeue, where we remove an element from the front. But here's where it gets interesting. Notice how this translates to computer memory. If we keep adding to the back and removing from the front, the entire body of our data actually begins to slowly drift rightwards in memory over time, and that physical drift is going to cause a massive headache for us very soon. Which brings us to Section 2, arrays versus linked lists. Okay, now that we have the basic concept down, let's acknowledge the level up in difficulty and look at some actual implementation hurdles. Here's our first major limitation. If we build our queue using an array, we have to declare a fixed size right up front. Let's say we reserve space for 10 elements. Remember that rightward drift I just mentioned? As we enqueue at the rear and dequeue from the front, our data shifts to the right. Eventually, our rear pointer hits the very end of the array. Suddenly, we run out of room at the back, even though we have perfectly good, empty, deleted space just sitting there at the front. We're stuck. Or are we?
Enter the circular array. This brilliantly illustrates how a little bit of math can totally save our memory constraints. We use an F variable to track the front index and an R variable for the rear. When R hits the end of our array, we don't crash. Instead, we use a mathematical operation called modulo, specifically R+1 modulo n. This elegantly wraps our rear pointer all the way back around to the 0 index at the front of the array, letting us reuse that empty space. We essentially turn a straight line of memory into an endless loop. We just have to make sure we stop at n-1 elements, basically leaving one empty slot so the computer never gets confused about whether the array is completely full or completely empty.
But what if we just don't want to guess our maximum size up front? Let's compare our array queue with a linked list queue. The array is rigid, right? It requires that clever wraparound logic. A linked list, however, is dynamic. It uses individual data nodes connected by pointers. We assign the head node to act as the front of our queue and the tail node to act as the rear. And the best part? We can just keep adding nodes to the tail forever. No fixed size limits at all. Sounds pretty perfect, doesn't it? Well, not quite. We actually have a fatal flaw here. Well, adding to the tail of a basic singly linked list is super easy. What if we want to remove the tail? Remember, in a singly linked list, pointers only go one way, forward. To delete the tail, we have to tell the node right before it to point to null. But to find that previous node, we literally have to start at the very head and traverse the entire length of the list just to find the second to last item. This costs linear order and time. If you have 1,000,000 elements, you have to do 1,000,000 steps just to perform one single deletion. That is highly, highly inefficient. So let's fix that in Section 3, double-ended queues. We desperately need a heroic solution to this problem. So we're going to upgrade our basic queue into a dequeue, a double-ended queue. As the definition shows, this is a queue that gives us absolute maximum flexibility. It supports both insert and delete operations at both the front and the rear ends. But to pull this off efficiently, we're going to have to fundamentally change the underlying architecture. We build this dequeue using a doubly linked list. The absolute crucial point here is that every single node now has 2 pointers, one pointing next to the element ahead and a previous pointer looking back. We also cap the ends with empty dummy nodes called sentinels, a header and a trailer, just to firmly mark the boundaries. Because every node knows exactly who is in front of it and who is behind it, we literally never have to traverse the whole list again. Deleting the tail? Just look at the previous pointer. Boom, done. Every single operation now runs in constant time, or O of 1. No matter how big the list gets, insertion and deletion take the exact same tiny amount of time. It's a real game changer.
Moving on to Section 4, the adapter pattern. Now that we have this incredibly powerful O of 1 dequeue structure, how can we leverage it? Well, the adapter pattern is honestly one of my favorite concepts. It's a brilliant shortcut in software engineering. By definition, it basically means implementing a new, specialized class simply by utilizing the methods of another, more general class you've already written. I mean, why reinvent the wheel when you already have a sports car engine sitting right there?
Let's see how we can actually adapt our dequeue. We can literally map the operations of simpler structures directly onto it. Want to build a stack? You don't need to write new code from scratch. Just map push to the dequeue's insert last function and pop to its remove last function. Need a standard queue? Easy. Map enqueue to insert last and dequeue to remove first. We've completely adapted our master architecture to fit our exact specialized needs, and it took almost zero effort.
And that brings us to Section 5, vectors, lists, and sequences.
Let's begin our final ascent into the most advanced paradigms of this explainer. So far, we've really just been pushing things to the front or the back, but what if our elements have a highly specific numerical rank? Think about students in a graduating class. You have the number 1 ranked student, number 2, number 3. If the student ranked 4th leaves the school, what happens? Well, the student who is 5th automatically shifts up to become 4th. This introduces a whole new level of complexity. To handle rank, we use a vector abstract data type. A vector lets us instantly access an element if we know its rank, like saying, hey, give me rank 17. But managing this rank forces us to do some heavy lifting. If we insert a new student at rank 2, we have to physically push ranks 3, 4, 5, and everyone else one step to the right. That shifting is expensive. It costs linear O of n time, just like we saw earlier with the singly linked list.
Conversely, sometimes we just don't care about the rank. Sometimes we just want to point to a specific node and say, delete this guy, without worrying about the messy internal pointers or whether it's an array or a linked list. This gives us the position ADT. Positions are great because they hide all those messy implementation details. They act purely as a pure, abstract reference to exactly where an element is stored. So, we have vectors for rank and lists with positions for direct access, but what if we want both? Well, we tie it all together with the sequence ADT. This is the ultimate hybrid structure. It uses multiple inheritance, literally combining both vector and list traits. It beautifully bridges the gap between positions and ranks. If you know a rank, the @rankr method gives you the exact position in memory. If you hold a position, the rank of p method calculates its current rank. It connects the two worlds perfectly.
But here's where we kind of hit the ceiling of computer science. If we build our sequence using an array, rank operations are lightning fast, constant O of 1 time, because arrays use math to jump straight to an index. But position operations, like inserting in the middle, force everything to shift, costing linear O of n time. On the flip side, if we use a doubly linked list, the exact inverse happens. Position insertions are blazing fast, O of 1 time, because we just swap a couple of previous and next pointers. But rank operations? Terrible. To find rank 50, we have to count 50 nodes one by one, costing linear O of n time.
And this brings us to the absolute core takeaway of this entire explainer. There is no perfect data structure. Seriously, there's no magic bullet that gives you O1 time for everything. Designing software is entirely about making strategic trade-offs between constant and linear time. Your choice depends entirely on the specific operations your application relies on most. Are you checking ranks more often, or are you adding and removing data more often? You just have to choose your architecture accordingly.
We've gone from a simple grocery store line all the way to understanding the intricate trade-offs of sequence abstract data types, wrapping around arrays, and double linking our lists. You now have the foundational logic to look at exactly how data is moving behind the screen. But ask yourself this: if every digital action you take relies on these hidden trade-offs, what other invisible architectures are ruling our modern world? Ready to master even more complex structures like trees, graphs, and hash maps? Make sure to hit that subscribe button for our next series where the difficulty ramps up again. Keep learning, keep structuring, and I will see you in the next explainer.